almost cut my hair. It happened just the other day. It's getting kind of long.
Dave Cycle Talk. I'm Dave from Dave Cycle Parts, and this is Cycle Talk. Today we'll talk about clutches for an Ironhead. And one of the tips that is good to know is you got to watch out on these spaces when they go onto this plate. Sometimes this plate, if it's aftermarket, can have like a little bump there, a little booger, and it keeps this spacer from going all the way on. See how that's nice and flat? Well, on some of them it'll be up too high because of that little spot. So part of preparing everything to put the clutch on right is you have to be able to get this nut. This is the adjuster nut. You have to be able to get this off this side. And see how it's getting stuck there because of the slot in there. So we're probably going to have to sand that down a little, run a die over it. You want to be able to take this nut right off and put it to the side so that when you're putting the cover on, you can grab this stud with your finger and put it on like this. If you hold this tight and pull on it, it keeps these balls together from falling out. So with the nut on it, you can't get your fingers in there. So you got to be able to take the nut off, do that, and when you're all said and done, pick the nut up and thread it on easily. So usually you have to clean this up here. And very important part of this too is this star washer. This goes on here so that when you tighten this nut after you adjust everything, when you tighten it, you don't have to just go crazy and go over tight with it, because the star washer helps a lot to hold it in place once you tighten it. So there's a couple more tech trips. And in here, when you put this in, you put some wheel bearing grease in here. That way it holds the balls in so that when when it opens up, the balls don't fall out of the slot. That little spot right there, and right there, it's kind of chewed up. Get one of these here. Maybe this one. Yep. Might be a little bit overkill, but sportster clutches are terrible. You don't want to have to do them twice. So you take all the precautions you can. And you'll see later when we're putting the cable on why this is important. Back and forth a few times. So now we can take this when we're putting the cover on and hold it like that and push it on, and then that way there it keeps the balls from falling out. So should be good to go now. Look at that, threads right on. Okay. For anybody that doesn't have one, if you ride a bike, you should have this in your tool bag. Little teeny tiny little snap ring pliers for getting this pin out here. See the little clip there? And it's got to be so small to get that thing in there. So, but everybody should have one of these in your tool bag. It works on this side and that side, but just a little note, something you should have. All right, when you're putting this thing together, it's easy to get things all put in there wrong. So you put your CSI glasses on, and this is how it goes together. See how that's got 3 marks on it? You can tell it's been rubbing on these 3 spots right here. So this is how this goes in. This thing goes in there first. It's kind of like a thrust washer, sort of. Flip this over. This goes in here, and that little ear goes up in here. We'll get it in there further when we're done, but that's what all these pins are about. They're just to hold this thing in there so it don't fall out. It's not insanely necessary, but the secret to this clutch is you got this ball and ramp assembly, right? During final assembly, we'll put grease all over it. So right now, we're just going to set that thing in here. All right, we'll put this on in position where it goes. Like this, okay? The cable comes in the front here and hooks up in here. All right? But what we want to know is where this thing goes in and out. See, it goes in and out, and it has a low spot and a high spot. The trick to this whole thing is where this thing is sitting when you adjust it. So this is the low spot right here. That's the lowest spot, right? So we take the Sharpie marker, and we do, I don't know, it doesn't matter where you mark it, but you mark it so that it's indexed so that you can see where this is in the lowest spot. And that's the secret to the clutch right there. So you hook up your cable, you get everything in, and when you go to adjust it, you make sure that the cable's not pulling on it like this, or you make sure it's not too sloppy in here where you can go like this to it. Okay, because as soon as you go either direction, it starts to go up again. This piece, the ramp and ball and ramp, comes apart. So the secret is adjusting it here so that the cable's hooked up and this is lined up. And then when you get that set, you hold it right there. Now you put it on the bike and you do your center screw adjustment. But the center screw adjustment has to be done when this is sitting in the lowest spot. And that's where a lot of people make the mistake is this adjuster out here, they'll be out here on the cable. They won't have any idea where this is. This is in too far, it can go like this. If they pull on it too much, it'll start here and you're already got half of your distance. So when you pull the clutch in, it goes boom, it goes too far, and then that's when the balls can fall out. So the secret is, before you put the cable in, before everything's assembled, figure out where this mark is, make a mark, and then that'll come in handy when we're putting it on the bike. This stuff is like snot. You get just enough in there to fill that little divot. Put the ball in there. The ball in there. This goes here like this. Now we know everything's in the right spot. Alright. Get this one or this one? This is the handlebar one. We don't want that one. This little guy on here. Like that.
Show the camera.
Can always check with the, make sure that get in there right by grabbing this, see if it spins around. Look all the way around. Yeah, it's in there. Okay. So that's nice. We know that's in there. Now, we might have to remove some of this peening, or hopefully we can just get it right to go in there. We might just give it a little tap with a hammer. Let me grab a hammer. This one little spot's up a little bit here, so get that set down in there. And the old peen marks are gonna hold it in. I think that's in there all the way. Alright, so we check our marks again. See, now that everything's seated, see how that goes up, down. Right there, those lines line up. So once we get it on the bike, we get everything assembled, that's got to line up. We're at the point where it's important with this nut and the center screw, why we clean that up so that this could thread on this way, like that, nice and easy. Because for the next step of putting it on the bike, we don't want that there. This is going to go in here. We want it to thread in nice. And this is where, if you had that nut on there, you wouldn't be able to hold it with your fingers. So we screw that in a few threads. Now, when we're putting a cover on the bike, you grab this with your hand, with one hand, and pull on it. Pull it this way, and you go like this. This is how the cover goes on, like this. So, with you holding this, it keeps this from coming apart. See how if I let that go, see how that can open up? And it exposes the balls and they can fall. So if this is all floppy and you're putting the cover on, it'll fall. But if I pull on it like this with my fingers, this is tight. And so that's why we do that, so that this can go on and off. After it's on the bike and there's something holding pressure against it, like this, then you can go back in later, after this is adjusted, you go back in later and put this on, and then put this on. And see, that's why it's important that we had that clean, so that you can do that. So this here is a little ferrule on the cable on the earlier bikes. And we got later model 96 and up controls here, and so we don't have the round eyelet on the cable. So we're gonna have to find the right pin to fit in here that fits inside the thing on the handlebar so that this can hook into it. So that's about the only thing that's different in the newer cables and levers and stuff is the eyelet. So we're gonna have to find a pin. All right, so we found some pins, and we got one that fits in the thing up on the handlebars, and it goes in here. And what you don't want is And it's got to be able to sit and spin nice. What you don't want is, you don't want to be able to see the notch from the front when it's on the bike. You want it like this. So what you have to do is put the cable in like this and then hook it. That's the way it's supposed to look when it's done. Okay? So that the cable, the opening in the ferrule is back here. So anyway, we found a couple pins. We got what we need. We're gonna put the cable on the bike. So one thing you gotta look out for on these later model cables is there's more throw to them than the earlier one, so it really pulls on it. So what you have to be careful of is when you're pulling the clutch in all the time. See the back of that thing right there? See how that one's got a little lip on it, that little edge right there, and it's sharp? You got to be careful of that because this thing really pivots a lot like this, and it'll cut the cable right here and cut it right off. So what you do is get in there. This one looks a little bit better. It's a little more rounded in here. You can get in there with your Dremel and just deburr these edges just a little bit. And that little tiny bit will go a long way in how long this cable lasts before it ends up cutting it right here, see? So deburring it's not a bad idea. Make sure it fits nice and smooth. And so one thing that sucks about aftermarket cables is this is a 5/16 fine thread, but they usually give you a crappy nut. And it's not metric and it's not freaking standard, so no wrench will fit the damn thing. And on the bike, you can't get a wrench in there, so it's people are using pliers. They're putting sideways tension on this thing. It's just terrible because the nut gets too close to the primary cover. So one thing I do is I'll get a real actual 5/16 fine nut that a 1/2-inch wrench will fit. We put that on there, right? And then also we get a little tiny spacer. Let's see if we can find one. What we want is like a washer that's a little on the thick side. Maybe like that. Just an 1/8 inch. There we go. That's the perfect one. That's what we're looking for. So we get one of those and put that on there. Now, when you're on the bike, you're away from the primary cover and the 1/2-inch wrench fits it. So it just makes it nicer when you're all said and done. So one of the things I'm doing to get the clutch set up right in an Ironhead is I'm setting up this cover so that it's right there, so it's the same distance away as it would be as when the cable's installed. So I'm going to get the cable installed, get that all in here, get it all plugged in here, and we use this. You could use a box, anything you want, but you got to get the cover to sit right there, and that's step one. Get the cover off, get your bolts laid out, get the cable installed, and then we'll go from there. The secret to getting this thing right is in here. Putting this cable on, you got to be careful. A lot of times this thing gets, the threads in here get messed up. You don't want that. Be nice. Make sure it threads in there good. And that's the thing, this thing's 9 miles long, so, you know, people get confused on where it should be. They think, oh, screw it all the way in, screw it all the way out. And messing around with this and going in and out and doing this. And you can't just do it. It's got to be in the right spot. And that's why people say, can you just adjust the clutch on my Ironhead? I say, no. Because if you don't know where that thing is inside there, then you don't know where you're starting from. You can take a guess. I can take an estimated guess that a 1/4 inch here, it'll probably be about right. That's usually what it is. But every bike's different. You gotta wait till it's hooked up there and hooked up in here. And it's almost where it goes on the bike. That's why we use the box here. You gotta find out where it is. And then if you're in the right place or not. Thing here goes inside here like this and hooks on the back. And again, you don't want to see the open part. I believe it goes like this. So you go like this, like that. It's going to sit there. It goes underneath, right? So we go like this, hook it up, goes underneath like that. Now you're like this, okay? So that's that. It's connected inside. Now we get it connected up to the handlebar. All right. So everything fits in there. So put this This is the little guy that we got before. We want this on here, like that. We want this facing the right way inside of here. So it goes like this, like that. So that when it's on the bike, you don't see the thing. Now you hook this up, kind of tricky. Hook this up in here, get it, see the ferrule in there? It's gotta go all the way in. It can get screwed up and be out here. It's gotta be all the way in like that. You flip it around, go up here, go like this, and then put this in here, like that. We will go back in and put some grease all over that too. That's not final, but for the video it is. You get this thing to go in there, like that. I like to see that. Okay. Pull on this. But see how I'm pulling on this? It's got all that slack in it. All right. We know we're connected here. Everything's tight here. All right. And we got slack here. So this is no good. So we start undoing this. We'll undo this here. And we're taking some of this slack out. See this getting shorter? It's getting tighter in here. All right. Go right about here. Okay. Now I'm holding it in place. The lines are lined up, right? We got all the lines that we made earlier lined up. Now watch. As I start to pull on it, threading it this way, now it's starting to open, see? That's no good. That's too far. So we let it go back in. I'm pushing on it. That's where it stops, right there. If I go in more, now we got slack. No good. So I'm going to back it back out a little bit. Right there. For temporary reasons, we'll just snug this right here. Here we go. Now, we can go on the bike.
2, 1.
So the later model Ironheads, don't forget this thing here on the stud. It'll end up leaking out on the foot peg. And the gaskets, you can buy a metal coated one from James. I would prefer to have that, but they're like 35 bucks. I don't have one, so paper gaskets, I put a really thin light coat of silicone on there, and then let it tack up. The rule of thumb is you use blue. If it comes loose more than twice, then you use red. Boom, boom. You gotta make sure you get your Loctite on there when they fall out. So as you put this on, it'll hit there. You start putting your bolts in, and you can loosen this up a little by hand until it's just touching this, but you don't want to unscrew this enough so that it's way in here so that the balls can fall out. So we got the cable lubed up top. We got everything ready. The secret of this whole thing is this sitting right in the right spot here. See how that's all lined up? We know this is in the lowest spot right here. So we want to hold that right there. We put the cover on like this. And then once the cover is on, we adjust the center screw and we're done. That's the secret to doing this, is to hold this piece right here so that those balls can't fall out. Now being a later model one, it has this tensioner underneath it that's a real pain in the butt. So you gotta push up on this foolish thing. There's a spring in here. And you gotta get it lined up. You gotta be a lot more careful once the gasket's in place. There we go, we got it on. There we go. Now, see, this is touching. So if I was to screw this in, it pulls the cover away. I unscrew it a little bit, boom, right there, it gets loose. I put it in just till it has a little tension on it. Now, as long as my hand is pushing on this, the balls can't fall out. So now we've already put Loctite on these. We'll go around and put all these bolts in. That's the next step, and get them all torqued. So see you in a minute. So one thing I do when I'm putting the bolts in is, rather than just hope that everything's fine, I actually take a flashlight and look in each hole. And I make sure as I go that I can see all the way through and I don't see the gasket in there. Because sometimes it can drop down here or go up inside there. So I look inside each hole, and if it's not lined up, I use an Allen that's the next smallest size with a ball on it. And go like that. That way it don't tear the gasket. So it's just a good way to know that you're putting the bolts in the right hole without ripping your gasket. we got all these bolts torqued. They're about 7 to 9 foot-pounds, I think, is this factory torque. We got the nut on here, double nutted that so I don't crush that thing to death. And now that everything's on and torqued, this is where the adjustment comes in. And all the prep work we did was just for this one moment, you know. Now, because that was already going in a little bit, it's snug. So we loosen this up now, and that means that our balls did not fall. But when we tightened up all these, this got even tighter. So now we're loosening it up. Okay, right there, that's where it gets free. So if I was to unscrew this a little bit more and more and more, the balls could fall out. So this is how you adjust it. And we only adjust this here when you know this is in the right spot to put that ball and ramp in the lowest spot. And we set that up ahead of time. So that's why we can do this and know that it's right. So we just go in till it hits. Okay, it's hitting, I don't know, right about 12 o'clock. Back it off a quarter turn, done. That's it. Now it should work here. You got a little bit, but you got too much free play. All right, but it's all working fine. No, and the balls drop. So everything's good. We keep that going horizontal, 9 o'clock. We put our nut on there and tighten it up, and then we can take the free play out here. And that's done, and that's perfect, and it'll work every time, but that's how you gotta do it. This ball and ramp has to be in the lowest spot, and then that's where you do your center screw adjustment, then take the free play out. So if you needed to go back in and do this again later, you'd have to have this at the right spot. So you could record that, you know, get your calipers out, measure that half, 3/4, whatever it is, write it down, keep it in your notes. If you ever wanted to adjust this again, you take this and thread it in until you get to that measurement, then you know the ramp is in the low spot, do your center screw, then take the free play out. But that's how you do it, and without it screwing up on you. That star washer that goes behind that nut's important, because then you don't have to tighten this, you know, nut down like crazy, and the star washer holds it there without, you know, so it doesn't want to back off. But this is what I usually do. I put it on there, tighten it up a little bit, and I just give it just 1 or 2 like that, and that just kind of locks it in. But what you can do, and I have done this before in the past, and it actually worked out good. I rode for about a week. If your clutch cable ever breaks on the side of the road, you just need to make this, see this piece going in and out? You need to reproduce that. So what you can do is I took this and this, put it on here like that, and I used some heavy duty duct tape, not too tight, but not too loose, and I duct taped this on here, and all you have to do is go like this. There's your clutch, put it in gear, let it out. And I did that until the cable came in. I ordered the cable. Took about a week to come in, but after a while I started riding with it. It worked pisser. So if you ever need to, that's all you need is a 13/16 plug wrench. You put it on here. There's your clutch. So anyway, that's adjusted, quarter turn, locked down, everything's good. It's all working here. We put this here. Take the free play out here. That's all we had to move it. We go right here. And then come around the front here. What you do is you tug on this cable just a little bit, and you go like that. See that? That's all the free play we got. That's not enough. So go in a little bit. You want to be able to fit about a nickel in there. Maybe a touch more. Just by tugging it so. Oh, that feels nice. That's it. So lock that down right there. And again, you see here, what I did is I put a normal nut on there for a 1/2-inch wrench, and this thick washer that allows the wrench to fit in there. Otherwise, you booger the cover all up. So that's it there. Tighten that up, and boom, she's done.